because I was ready to keep on worshiping. I'm Eloy. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. I struggle with a ton of stuff. And this lesson was a little bit different tonight than I thought it would go. It's on self-destruction, but we also kind of titled it Paying Tolls on Bridges You've Burned. And I originally wanted my parents to be part of this, because if there's anybody that's burned a ton of bridges, it's been me with my parents, my brother included. And it's been one of those things that where we were, where we are, is completely different 10 years from, today 10 years ago. That second song, I got turned on to that song a couple days ago by our worship leader when we were sitting up here. And I loved the beginning verse of that song that says, I'm a sinner, grace is still healing. I'm a story, time is revealing. I'm all those things, but mostly I'm thankful, yes I am. And then it says, I'm a fighter caught in a struggle. I'm a survivor rising above it. I'm all these things, but mostly I'm thankful. And I am. Don't get me wrong, I'm very thankful. When I started working on this a couple weeks ago, when we kept changing what the lesson was going to be, because it was going to be this, and it was going to be that, and it was going to be this, and then it's back to this. I had something already kind of typed out, and then just over the last couple of days, things have been brought to my attention, or I kind of just sat there and pondered on it, and I'm like, okay, it's going in a little bit different direction than I wanted. But I hope that I can put some real-world applications to it, and I hope that I can still tie in exactly what recovery is about and why we come to these programs, every time we do. So I'm going to ask a question first off. Have you ever set a goal, something that you really, really wanted, but then found yourself procrastinating, doubting yourself, or even sabotaging your own choices of success? That's me. Well, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to explore what self-destruction behaviors are, or sometimes what we call self-sabotage. So when I say self-destruction, I don't mean physical harm. I mean everyday ways we sometimes get in our own way, behaviors and thought patterns that keep us from thriving. One of the things that I've kind of struggled with has been the change that I had a couple months ago from one living situation to another. And I feel like I struggled when I first moved into this apartment. And I was very vocal about it. I was like, man, I love it, but I don't, because it's a change. And I think I forced that change faster than I wanted to. I love it, don't get me wrong, but there's things that I've done since I've moved in there that have put me behind the curve, that's put me behind where I thought I should be at this point in time. So I kind of self-destructed in a way, or sabotaged, because maybe it wasn't that plan at the time, but I forced that plan when the timing shouldn't have been what it was. But by the end of tonight, I hope that you guys will understand what self-destruction patterns look like, why they happen, and some practical tools that can help break us of that cycle. And we're going to cover 4 areas, hopefully, tonight, before time runs out, that can kind of give us a better understanding. So the first one is, what is self-destruction? I'm the poster child, I feel like, sometimes of what the self-destruction is. We joke about it, but there's been Monday nights where I've had a complete meltdown over something simple. Live stream not working, or a slide or whatever misspelled or whatever it is. That's my own making. I put myself there to do that. And that's not necessarily, a good thing, because that one little thing can snowball into other things and other things and other things. And by that time, I've been up on stage and said, I don't want to be here, because I let that one thing get in my way. I'm having to talk with a pencil because I can't put my hands in my pocket tonight, and I'm trying not to stare at my boots. So forgive me if the pen is getting in the way. I apologize, but I've got to do something. I needed a fidget spinner. So what is self-destruction? Self-destruction is when we act or engage against our own best interest. It's when we undermine ourselves, even without realizing it. This may mean we harm our own well-being, our own successes, or even our own relationships. And oftentimes, we just do that unconsciously. But it's usually about the coping strategies that we've had that have not always been the right coping strategies. But being self-destructive is also not a weakness. In Proverbs 19 lets us know that a person's own foolishness leads to their own ruin, yet their heart rages against the Lord. This verse suggests that our own foolish actions, our own self-sabotage, often are our own downfall. Instead of taking responsibility, we want to oftentimes blame others or even blame God. Some of the examples that we have: putting off work until the last minute. taking yourself out of opportunities. Overeating, over drinking, over scrolling on Facebook when stressed. And I've said it before, going through my divorce, I was a functioning alcoholic, and I smoked when I drank, and I drank when I smoked, which was pretty much all the time. That self-sabotage led to a ton of things that domino affected over the years. Things that I'm not proud of, but things that ultimately, shaped me in who I am today. Things that I've never really shared publicly, because it's just some of those things that at the right time, I can. But I've always opened the door to sharing more and more as I've always been on stage because, again, I've been the poster child for self-destruction. When I was married, I did all these horrible things to my ex-wife that I'm not proud of, that led to one, charge after another, thinking that I'm above the law, thinking that I can get away with things that I shouldn't have done. But the thing is, I didn't know it then. I didn't have a recovery program back then. I was just me in a foreign city, in a foreign state, by myself, struggling, not talking to my parents, not talking to other people that I had in my corner, wanting the best for me. I sabotaged my own success. I sabotaged my future for a long time. It has taken me my late 30s and my early 40s to finally rectify a lot of that. But even then, there's still things that I have to work on that I see that come up every so often. It's like, hey, you need to work on this. You need to focus on that. The biggest one, and I'm guilty of this as well, and I think most of us are, we push people away in relationships. And it just doesn't mean somebody that we're dating. I'm talking about family, friends, coworkers. We just have a tendency that we just want to push them out of the way because we don't want to open up. We don't want to talk about things. We don't want to admit faults. So here's an idea. Self-sabotage isn't about being lazy. It's not about being weak. It's usually the coping skills that I said that have gone wrong, that we've learned that may not be the healthiest. But again, that doesn't ever show any weakness. That just shows that we have opportunities to grow. So the second part is some common forms of self-destructive habits that we have. The first one, I'm guilty of it a lot of times, procrastination. Putting off making amends to harm I've done to others or myself, or coming to meetings. It's a holiday today. How many people really wanted to be here? I did, honestly, right? But there's people that didn't want to be here. They made that, and I pray that if they're not here tonight, they're somewhere safe, they're with family or their friends that are keeping them accountable. But we always have those choices. I've been on stage where I've said, I don't want to be here tonight. I'm mad at this thing, or I'm upset at that, and I just don't want to be here. But I pressed through and I came. And when I left, I was glad I came. Because I got more out of it than I wouldn't have if I didn't show up. I think we're all guilty of this, which is negative self-talk. We'll tell ourselves, I'll never really change, so why do I even bother? Why do I put the effort in if I'm never going to be anybody, if I'm never going to change, if it's always going to be the same? Because that's a lie. The devil's lying to you. You can change. I've seen plenty of people come through these doors and make changes and have plenty of success. And I brag on them, not as much as I pick on them, but I said it a couple weeks ago, like when I look in our sound booth, two guys that probably self-doubted them and talked bad about themselves for a long time, and they're two of the greatest people I know. And I'm going to talk about Burgess, don't worry, and I'm going to talk about Robbie. But they put that negative talk to the side. They focused on what's at hand, and they made change. And these are guys that I can count on week in and week out for anything. And it's proof that if you talk negative about yourself, you can turn it around. Because I'm not the only one, they're not the only ones. There's plenty of other people that I could point out in here that have done the same thing. But I don't have time. We have addictive behaviors. We substitute one addiction for another. Instead of a substance, we may turn to food. Or we may turn to gambling, or pornography, or toxic relationships. And how many of us have given up one thing for a toxic relationship? I'm just as guilty. I've turned from drinking to smoking, then back to smoking to drinking. I've turned from giving those up to turning over to pornography. I've given up something and picked up something else. Lately, it's doom scrolling at midnight on Facebook. That is my vice right now. That is something I'm not proud of, but that is something that I'm turning to because instead of doing what I always talk about on stage, instead of doing these things that we teach and we preach, I just go into another dimension. I go into another reality and just like I can escape it for a while. But that's not helping me because I'm not focusing on what's going on. I'm not working on myself. I'm keeping myself up late and then having to get up early. And then I'm tired. And then I'm grouchy. And it just repeats all the time. I've talked about the relationship sabotaging. We push away our sponsors. We push away loved ones that care about us. We push around people in our recovery groups. Again, I'm guilty of that. Because for so long, I didn't think I needed this program. I've said it before, when I first came into recovery, I was only here for a free meal. I was couch surfing. I didn't have any place. I didn't have any clothes. I had a suitcase that had a few things, but I didn't have any money. I didn't have a car. I didn't have anything. And my stomach was telling me it was hungry. So I came because there was a free meal. But when I got involved, I still was holding up that barrier. I was still keeping people at bay because I knew that I'm still a screw up. But I still have a ton of things that I don't want to share, that I don't ever want to talk about because I'm not happy, I'm not proud. I don't want to let anybody in. And the problem was, I got involved, then I went to prison. Then I came back. I'm like, all right, it's going to be different this time. I got involved, kept that barrier up, went back to prison. It wasn't until this last time that I'm like, all right, I've got more writing on this than I've ever had in my life. 2 kids, parents that are a little bit older than when I first went to prison, a brother that I have no relationship with. I kept all of them at bay until this last time because I realized this recovery is not just about me, it's about them. Because I would be so devastated if I messed up and I didn't have a chance to tell my parents goodbye if something ever happened. I saw it firsthand with my brother and my grandmother. He pushed her away over a Christmas card. They stopped talking for years, and they didn't ever make up until she passed away, and even then it was too late. But I saw that firsthand, and it resonates with me because I'm like, I don't want that with my family. And I'm seeing that again firsthand right now with my daughter and my mom. They're arguing over a relationship. Now, I've been on stage and I told you my daughter's happily married, or she was. Now she's happily in a relationship with a boyfriend while she's getting divorced from the husband. They're fighting, even though one of them doesn't know they're fighting. My mom is upset because my daughter hasn't been honest with her. But what I'm trying to get a point across to my mom, and I've talked to Jeff about this, and it's not trying to be a whole testimony, these are examples, is my mom is upset at my daughter because my daughter hasn't been truthful with her. And if they're both watching, sorry, now y'all both know that each other knows that I'm in the middle of all this. So, getting to the whole point is, like I try to tell my mom and I try to tell my daughter, if something happened tomorrow, with my mom not being honest with my daughter, she's going to regret if tomorrow was her last breath and she didn't get to say she's sorry or she loved my daughter because she's letting this little thing dictate how she looks at my daughter. And it's vice versa with my daughter. If my daughter doesn't come clean with my mom and something happened tomorrow to either one of them, how is she going to feel before she takes her last breath? What regrets is she going to have? I know now relationships are one of the biggest building blocks of your recovery. But it has to be the right relationships. You have to put the right people in your life. You have to have people that will fight for you day in and day out. I'm lucky that I can have that. I have great co-leaders and a mentor and friends that, as much as we joke about sometimes the immaturity that I am or the whatever we are about myself, I know that there's love behind it. And I know that they care about my sobriety just as much as I care about theirs. But I had to get to that point where I was at the very bottom and I had to realize what relationships meant. And I totally did not mean to take that long on a relationship topic, but because I'm like, don't take relationship advice from me. Ever. The other one we need to talk about is perfectionism. And I'm guilty of that just as well. We expect our recovery to be flawless, but then we quit when it isn't. And if you quit right before the change happens, you're not giving yourself a fair fight. I'm telling you right now, again, I'm that guy that gave up so many times before that change happened. And I regret it. But I also don't regret it because there were situations that I was put in that got to me where I'm at today. Would I ever want to go back to prison? Does anybody ever want to go back to prison? No. I'm glad I did go. And if I had to go again, I would go on more grateful than I ever have because I know there's a lesson behind it. Then we have our addictive escapes. Again, I said it. Social media is probably our biggest one. It's easy to watch these videos and get lost in all these other people's great lives and all their vacations and all these other things. But the thing is, that's them. That's not you. You don't know what they're going through behind the scenes, and they have no idea who you are. So why turn to those things? And video games could be another one. And, I mean, there's so many different things that we can get addictive in that gets us out of our reality and puts us into this thing that we can escape to. Pornography is one. We just have to put those to the side because our life is what we're living. We're not living theirs. We're living ours. And you know, ours may not be as pretty as theirs. We may not be on that boat or on that plane or on that beach on a vacation. But the thing is, we are where we need to be right now because that's where the Lord wants us. So, after reading every one of these, if one of them resonates with you, it shows you that these just aren't habits. These are signals pointing to a deeper fear, maybe even a belief. But you've got to remember what Romans 3:23 says. For all have sinned and all fall short of the glory of God. So, why do we have these tendencies? Why do we self-destruct? Well, Romans 7:19 and 20 tells us, for I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. And if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is in sin living in me. So here are 4 reasons why we kind of self-destruct. We have a fear of failure, or we have a fear of success. If I sabotage myself, I never have to face that possibility of a real failure. If I fail now, well, then I don't have to worry about failing in the future because guess what? I didn't do it. Sometimes it feels safer to fail on my own terms than it does living it out. Or, what if I get clean and I still don't feel whole? Because we've had people that could get clean time behind them for so long and then fail because they don't like where they're at because it's not a feeling they've ever been comfortable with. But you got to push past it because when you do, that feeling is a complete different feeling than where you just were. You have so much weight taken off your shoulders. You have a different outlook, different friends, more possibilities in life. The second one is we have a low self-worth. Sometimes we don't feel like we deserve recovery or even that better life. Deep down, we may not believe we deserve any of that success, any love, or any happiness. But again, that's just the devil talking. You deserve to have all of that. And if I've learned one thing from Pastor Jeff, it's how you talk about yourself. Because he will call you out if you start talking bad about yourself around him. He really, really will. And when I worked for another company, if you talked bad about yourself, they made you say 3 positive things about yourself. And I'm telling you, it's hard for me to say 3 things positive about myself. And when I had to do it, I'm like, I'm strong, I'm beautiful, I'm talented. And I'd use the same 3 things most of the time, but then she's like, you got to say 3 different things because you can't keep using the same ones. And I'm like, well, that's getting even tougher because we are our harshest critic. We look at ourselves differently than everybody else does. We magnify every imperfection. But nobody else in this room is doing that. They're not. At the end of the day, they care about your safety, they care about your health, they care about your recovery, they care about you. They don't care that your hair may not be perfect or that you didn't do this or whatever. That's insignificant to them. You're making it a bigger thing than it is. So if you feel like you're going to say something bad about yourself, just step back for a minute. If you can't say 3 things, start off with 1. Start somewhere. I still get in the habit of sometimes saying bad things about myself. Sometimes it's joking because it's just, that's how I do things. I have to make light of certain situations. I don't like being uncomfortable. So I tell those corny dad jokes, or I do those stupid things that get a laugh out of it. But at the end of the day, I know that that's not who I am. Sometimes we fail or we do these things that are self-destructive because we have comfort in what's familiar. You know, we tend to dwell on those painful habits, those painful hurts. We feel safe in the predictable. You know what I mean? When I was drinking and I was smoking, that's all I knew. So to kill the pain, I'd drink because I didn't want to feel anything different. I liked that feeling because it was a poor, poor, pitiful me type situation. But the thing was, I wanted to be out of that, but I didn't because I didn't want to know what that other side felt like. I wanted people to feel sorry for me sometimes. For some of us, it's the chaos that feels normal. We have to have some type of drama going on in our life all the time. And in both of those events, peace just feels uncomfortable. But it's okay to feel uncomfortable because that means you're making progress. It means you're going somewhere. You're not just staying still. And we all know what the definition of insanity is, which is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. Well, if you're familiar with that comfortable thing, you're just living in chaos. You're living in all this craziness. And it's not that hard to break out of it. It's not. And we'll get to that in a minute. Some of us have unprocessed emotions or trauma. Sometimes self-destruction is a survival strategy we develop when we didn't have better tools at our advantage. Or using substances or certain behaviors to cope with that pain that hasn't yet been healed. Proverbs 24:16 says, "For through the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again. But the wicked stumble when calamity strikes," which offers hope and resilience in the face of any setbacks, reminding believers that they can rise again from their failures with God's help. Other verses, like Philippians 4:13 and Psalms 37:23 and 24, emphasize that God provides the strength to overcome challenges and holds us believers by hand, preventing us from being completely defeated. And that's one of the things right there. You have to turn to God. You've got to give it to the cross. That wasn't actually planned to be on here tonight. The cross looks amazing, so I'm glad it's a prop now. But that's the first thing. First lesson we always talk about is we have to admit, right? We have to admit we have a problem, that we're powerless. So we have to break the cycle, which is the fourth part of tonight. So once we know what the pattern is and we can see our pattern, we can start changing things. Ephesians 4:22 through 24 states, "You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by the deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on a new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness." So here are 5 tools that we can use to help break that cycle of self-destruction. We have to be aware, which again comes down to admitting we're powerless, which is step 1. The moment you notice you're sabotaging yourself, pause. Put a name on it. I'm talking bad about myself again. I've got to stop doing that. Or I'm depressed, so I'm at home and I'm eating more. Put a name on it. I haven't said this word yet. Journal. Put it on paper. I know a lot of guys don't like to hear that word. I don't care. I love it. I love that word journal because it gives me something that I can go back and look at and say, all right, I struggled with this back in 2023. I know the patterns that were there, so I can fix it. I can see things in black and white. The other thing, if you're journaling, you can do step 4 of the recovery process, which is a moral inventory. You know, you can say, hey, I'm procrastinating because I'm scared this just won't be perfect. Again, it's okay to be perfect, not perfect. None of us are perfect. Nobody on this planet is perfect. One day we will get to meet perfection. We'll get to heaven. But right now, we're all a work in progress. My watch just told me I exercised for the day. I guess moving my hands has been great. So, That's what happens when you don't put your hands in your pockets. Your watch actually thinks you're exercising. So there we go. You never know what you're going to get with me. So put it on paper. Give it a name. Say, hey, this is what's going on. Put a pattern interruption in your place. Replace that destructive behavior with something small, a healthier action. Instead of doom scrolling at midnight, stand up and take 3 breaths. I don't know why I put that in there, because lately it's been hard for me to breathe at night. But maybe that's the reason why. Maybe it's the Lord telling me, hey, get off that phone, get up, do something about it. Yes, it may be midnight, but guess what? Do something different. If you're not, you're again living in that insanity process. If you have the opportunity, call your sponsor, call an accountability partner, call somebody who is a positive, safe influence in your life instead of acting on that impulse. Again, going back to kind of that self-talk, because in recovery, we have a tendency to always look bad about ourselves, especially if you've had a background or you've had a past and you've got a deck of cards that have all of your different mugshots on them like I do. You always have that tendency to look at those and go back to those names. But we're all given new names, not just by ourselves, but the Lord has given us new names. So refrain from your self-talk. Shift the I can't do these or I can't do this into trying to learn something and how to do it. Remember, it's progress, it's not perfection. Have accountability. That's the 4th one. Share your goals with somebody that you trust. Being seen helps us stay on track. I like to be a hermit. I like to sometimes just go into my apartment, turn the air down where it's really cold, and not get out of bed. That's not a healthy habit sometimes. That puts me outside of being accountable not only to myself or to my family, but the people that I care about that care about me. And I've said this before, and I'm going to call them out on it again, but the one time that I was going through a really dark period in my life, Jason showed up for me because I was being a hermit. And I was not wanting to talk or share, even though we had this breakthrough in the lobby where I completely broke down and told everybody what was going on. Jason made sure that he still kept in touch. Now, he put it on the wrong doorstep, but he tried. And then I thought I was going to get shot trying to go find the stuff that he gave me. Luckily, nobody was home, so I was able to get it pretty quick. But I took myself out of that situation of being held accountable. But he didn't. He kept himself accountable to me, to himself, and to everybody else. And I'll always remember that. Because that's what friends do. That's what people that care about people do. This is not as significant as his, but a couple weeks ago I was driving home at night and I saw his rodeo sitting on the side of the road with the lights flashing, and there was an accident. I thought he was involved in it. So I immediately called him thinking the worst, that he'd been involved. But he wasn't, thankfully. But it's one of those things that if I didn't have these friendships, I wouldn't have done that. If I'd have known Jason just because I knew Jason before recovery, I wouldn't have called him. I'd have been like, bye. He can figure it out. But that's not who I am anymore. I care about people. I've learned from great friends on, you got to stop on the side of the road sometimes and push somebody off the road because they're in danger. Or you've got to turn around on a 10-mile bridge in the middle of downtown Dallas and turn around and help somebody get gas because they're in danger. I've learned these things, and I care about them. So you have to hold yourself accountable, not just yourself, but the people that you care about that more importantly care about you. Share your goals with that person. Be seen. Go to your meetings. Talk to your sponsors. Go to a peer group if you need to. And again, journal. And the last one of this part is self-compassion. Remember that we are not our patterns. Talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend. That's the biggest thing. If I'm messing up, I'm going to talk to somebody like if they were messing up. I'm going to talk to myself like they're messing up. Because I look at it this way too. If my kids did something wrong, how do I want that person that might have seen that talk to my kid? Do I want them yelling and jumping down their throat? No. I want them to talk to them with compassion and care and give an example and say, this is why we're having this conversation. Do that with yourself. Is it going to be easy? No, it's not. But do it. I don't like looking in the mirror, but there's sometimes that I got to look in the mirror, and I went and bought one, and I don't know why I bought it, but I bought one. It's a mirror this tall so I can look at my whole entire self. And I don't like looking at myself, but I have one. But it also helps me see myself for who I really am. for the person that I know I am, the person that everybody else knows that I am, not the person that I think I see in that mirror. But I still don't know why I bought it. Oop, I just lost my place. Remember, slips are not failures. They're just signs that you need some adjustment. And remember, these aren't just fixes that happen overnight, but each small interpretation builds a new habit over time. So, I'm going to wrap up finally. Remember that God sees us as valuable. He created us and made us in his image. And for those in Christ, he sees us as holy and flawless. While he sees our every thought and our every action, he looks at the heart rather than our outward appearance. He is unfailing in his love for us, and he sees our potential and our purpose. And self-destruction doesn't always mean that we're broken. It just means that we've been surviving the only way we know how. Recovery is about learning new ways. We've all learned something over this last year. We may not remember it right now, but we've all learned something by somebody sitting on this stage during a panel discussion, during a testimony, during a song. We've all learned something. 1 Samuel 16:7 says, "For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." And that's the thing again. We're our own worst critic. We see every flaw. We see every gray hair. We see all that. But at the end of the day, that's insignificant to the Lord. And I can say that it's insignificant to anybody else in here that looks at somebody. Because we're all in here for the same reason. We want to see ourselves succeed and get over any hurts, habits, and hangups. And we want to help and see other people have the same freedom. So again, I know I'm kind of repeating some things, but remember, self-destruction is just a pattern. It's not our identity. And most of the time, it comes from fear, low self-worth, or old coping strategies. And awareness is just the first step into breaking that cycle. Here's a practice you can try this week. If you notice a destructive behavior, just write it down. And each time you catch yourself in that sabotaging thought or in that destructive thought, just write it down. Don't judge it. Just track it. The awareness will be powerful enough. And I'm not saying that has to be a journal this time. If you've got some index cards or if you've got some sticky notes, use them. I'm not one of those people, because I'm not a female, I don't know offense if they do this, but I'm not one of those ones that put a whole bunch of things around a mirror. Because again, I don't like mirrors. But I know that there's people that will put things that are positive sayings about themselves around a mirror that they use every day. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, I've got a ton of blue chips. And each blue chip that I have has a date on there. And that date is for something that I've been working on. But I've correlated that date to my journal. So I know that, hey, this blue chip that I have means that I did this or I struggled with that. So I can see those patterns again. And I'll close with this quote. Awareness is the greatest agent for change. We just have to be aware. And if somebody comes to you and they tell you, hey man, I'm seeing something in you, it's okay. They're doing it out of love. They're doing it because they care. They're wanting you to see something that you may not be able to see right now because you're in a place that you may not be able to. I've been fortunate in my years to have those people in my life. I've been fortunate enough to understand their heart behind it. Did I like it? No. Did it hurt? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I know their love. I know their heart. I know that they care. And I get to pay that forward. Because I want the same thing that somebody else saw in me. Because if nobody had did that for me, I wouldn't be here today. If nobody cares about you to say anything, you wouldn't be here today. That's the thing about it. The foundation of who you are needs to be built on love first and foremost. To love one another. Just like we love God. Because he wants the best for us and he wants the best for you. So, I hope something has helped you guys tonight. I really do. And I want to say this. Thank you for showing up for yourselves tonight. Thanks for letting me share.